All right, my English teacher friends. So in this writing workshop video, I've created a crash course on how to construct introductory paragraphs for rhetorical analysis. So in the AP language world, we call this FRQ2. For you Gen Eders, just call it rhetorical analysis. It's the exact same thing. So one of the things that I do, and many of you are familiar with my work and you've seen me do this with literary analysis, in particular FRQ1 and FRQ2 for the AP literature exam, is I use Oscar-nominated short films to really hammer home and solidify how to write the introductory paragraphs for poetry and prose, short stories. But I do similar exercises with my Lang students, and I do rhetorical analysis with my Gen Eders as well. So to really solidify how to write an introductory paragraph for the purposes of performing rhetorical analysis, I often use commercials, classic commercials. And for this particular writing workshop, where we're just skilling and drilling how to get the thesis point, but how to do it with sophistication, how to do it with voice, rhythm, and flow while manipulating my template. We used a Flintstone or a Winston cigarette commercial that featured the Flintstone. So if you just go to YouTube and type in Winston cigarette Flintstone, it'll pop up and you can check it out. So it's a fascinating commercial. And I talk a lot about the rhetorical appeals with my students. And we play this game of pretend when we watch commercials. I say, pretend that you are a board committee for Winston cigarettes and that I made this commercial. Explain to me why I made it and how I made it. What's the authorial intent? How did I construct meaning in terms of the rhetorical nuance and the pieces that comprise the whole picture? So that's kind of how we do things. In terms of the writing, I'm always asking this question. What if we taught composition like Bob Ross teaches painting? When we do that, we paint with our students. So we say things like, okay, guys, we know that we're performing rhetorical analysis. So we're going to declare the thesis, right? We don't want to invert because that sets us up for plot summative statements. We're not writing a cliff note summation of this commercial. We're doing rhetorical analysis. So we're going to declare the thesis. And then me as expert writer in the classroom says, all right, class, I wrote 3 examples for you before you step foot in class. Here's example 1, talk my way through it, talk about all the intricacies of the template. How did I pull the strings of the template? Here's exemplar number 2, and here's exemplar number 3. On your mark, get set, go, write it on your own. So what I'm going to show you are the exemplars that I wrote for my students so that they can do this. Now, there's several ways to go about doing this. So one is I show the commercial and just say, on your mark, get set, go, bust out an introduction. And then I show them my samples after they've written, and they compare their writing to my writing. Or, especially early in the academic year when we're just figuring things out, I'll show them my exemplars and models, and they follow. Ultimately, though, I want them to write first, independent of my modeling, and then to compare their writing to my models and exemplars. And then we'll broadcast a bunch of student examples up on the overhead, and we can kind of see the good, the bad, the ugly with regards to it. But early on, when I'm doing commercials, I like to do some kind of like fishbowl Socratic seminars, Harkness discussions, Plato's Plato discussions, just to get a sense of how to read a commercial as a rhetorical text. So that takes a little bit of practice. So, go at your own pace. So the question immediately is this: how do I construct the introductory paragraph? Well, for those familiar with my work, you know that we're doing rhetorical analysis, so we're always going to declare the thesis for rhetorical analysis. I'll go over the inverted just to give you a flavor of it, but I'm going to kind of do a drive-by of it. Inverted is what we use for all of the FRQs on the AP literature exam. We also use declarative or inverted for argument, synthesis, persuasion, and research. Those are a 50-50 flip, but rhetorical analysis, declare, literary analysis, invert. So let's take a look at this. If I'm going to write up some real intricate prompt for this commercial to have my students write a whole essay about it, if I have a good prompt, like good prompts like what we see on FRQ2 on the AP language exam, all FRQ2 prompts for the AP language exam ask two implicit questions. What is the authorial intent, and how does the author construct meaning? So when we answer the question, how does the author construct meaning, we are by extension articulating the thesis statement. And what I have my students do is this. I have them immediately focus on the construction of meaning. Therefore, we're declaring the thesis. And what they do is just kind of weave in, sprinkle in the authorial intent. So like, what's the exigence of the commercial? What's the universal theme? What's the truthiness of the commercial? What's the point of the commercial, right? So you can phrase those questions however you want. So here's the kicker. In my classroom, I have a poster, and it's a list of the words or the rhetorical terms and devices that we've seen up until a certain point in our discovery of doing rhetorical analysis. So at the time of showing the Flintstone commercial, my students were familiar with all of these terms and devices. And it's just a Velcro poster. So when we get introduced to a new word, I just add it to the poster. So I think it's a pretty good list, but it's not totally exhaustive. But the bulk of stuff is there. Good enough to go by. And what I have them do with rhetorical analysis is find and locate in whatever text we're analyzing the three most salient terms and or devices in the piece, whether it be a commencement speech, a letter, even a commercial. Find the three most salient terms and or devices and get that cloaked around your thesis statement. Lead with the most important one. And that's why we go declarative. So you begin with, how does the author construct meaning? Begin with the thesis. So I like the shape of the triangle here. Oftentimes in argument, and we have to remember that rhetorical analysis is an expository mode, so the kids are arguing. Their argument must be central. So oftentimes in argument, we might say, dude, what's your point? Come on already, spit out your point, get to it. So when students declare, they articulate their point right out of the gate. How does the author construct meaning? So the most important, pertinent, salient rhetorical term and or device right out of the gate. From there, as they're getting into the context and background without being plot summative, we don't want it to read like a Cliff Note summation. They're going to sprinkle in a little bit of context and background, right? But don't retell the story of the commercial. And in doing so, you're still focusing on the construction of meaning. You got to get your other two pieces in there, the two terms and devices. Sprinkle in a little bit of tier 2 level vocabulary. By tier 2, I simply mean your average run-of-the-mill SAT caliber words. And you know that with my students, I run something called the Word Study Academy from day one of the academic year until they leave me in June. We do intensive vocab study. So you'll see my students, bust out some good words, but they're not goonish about it. I don't want them to be contrived and pretentious, overly academic. There's a good blend of colloquial, vernacular, and tier 2 academic diction in my students' exemplars. So it's kind of a teeter-totter balance of colloquial, vernacular, tier 2. Sentence constructs, again, most of you are familiar with my work. You know that I espouse and piggyback rule number 18 that Strunk and White write about in their seminal text called Write It Right. And they make the assertion that there's 12 different ways to construct a single sentence. So you'll see my students have pretty expressive syntactical moves in their piece, so as to avoid independent clause stacked upon independent clause stacked upon independent clause. So real struggling, emerging young writers tend to overdo the short, simple declarative or the independent clause. So in order to achieve voice rhythm and flow, that vocab needs to be up because rhetorical analysis is an academic task. But the sentence constructs need to be supple and flowy. So don't over parallel sentences. And then the kicker, every time my students write an introductory paragraph, it's going to be 4 sentences long. So this is how we break it down. All right, let me go back a second. 3 sentences ultimately are going to comprise the construction of meaning. 1 sentence is going to get authorial intent. So we know, maybe you don't know, I'm making assumptions here, that you've seen my literary analysis pieces. For literary analysis, we go 3 sentences authorial intent, 1 sentence construction of meaning. So I have a bunch of stuff in my YouTube channel where you can explore that. But this nicely demystifies the thesis for students. They know when they are doing rhetorical analysis, declare. And when they are doing literary analysis, invert. And then the other expository modes of argument, synthesis, persuasion, research, 50-50 coin flip. It does not matter. So let's take a look at a couple of exemplars and see how we do this. So it's literally like a 3+1. 3 construction of meaning, 1 authorial intent. Lead with the most important, salient, germane, rhetorical feature of the commercial. So this is what this student's going to do here. Winston's purpose is simple and clear: to get young children hooked to this particular brand of cigarettes. So immediately we're into purpose, right? So you got the exigence. You could even, say we're implying logos here. So we're good, right? That's the whole thing, is that, we're casting the Flintstones in a cigarette commercial. Well, Flintstones are for like little kids. Wait a minute, are we trying to get little kids hooked to cigarettes here? Oh my goodness. So yeah, that's kind of the main thing here. So we're 1 sentence in. Logically, so we got logos. The intended target audience for cartoons is elementary age kids. So in juxtaposing, so there's one of our words, the Flintstones with this product, the manufacturer is attempting to be sly in announcing their intent. While kids are emotionally, so the pathos, emotionally connecting with their favorite cast of characters, they are simultaneously developing an emotional connection to the normalization of smoking. The nonchalant effect of the male characters furthers this idea. So that nonchalant effect is the ethos of what's Fred and Barney. I forgot my Flintstones characters here. So Fred and Barney are like the focal point of the commercial for the most part. And they're very nonchalant about how they just smoke. The women are doing their chores and they're like, well, let's have a leisurely smoke break. Let's have a Winston, right? So the 3 are logos, pathos, and ethos, right? So my students imply, and we got the juxtaposition in here as well. So my students imply the terms. I find it to be more artful, more skillful when they do that. I think it sets them up to get the sophistication as one of those attributes of sophistication. If a kid can imply the terms instead of being so forthright and saying, the commercial's ethos are, that's not that skillful to do that. So exactly 4 sentences. Look at the sentence constructs. Oh my goodness. Look at this first sentence right here. Pretty cool. It has a colon in it. Like, kids don't do that very often. Logically, comma. And off you go. The intended target audience for cartoons is elementary age kids, comma. So in juxtaposing the Flintstones with this product, comma. The manufacturer is attempting to be sly in announcing their intent. So sentence complexity and sentence variation. The vocab is really good. I like this throughout. So words like juxtaposing, manufacturer is good, announcing, intent. Again, it doesn't have to be over the top, nonchalant, normalization, right? So, but you got that with a little bit of colloquial and vernacular. Get young children hooked, right? So don't overdo the geekiness, the nerdiness of the piece. To be sly in announcing, right? So a little bit of colloquial, a little bit of vernacular, a little bit of academic goes a long way to establish voice, rhythm, and flow. Here's another one that's going to take that 3+1 template. To normalize the idea of smoking for young children, Winston has America's favorite Stone Age cast of characters endorsing the idea that cigarettes are a totally innocuous plaything. And again, that's the logos, that's the exigence, right? That's the big aha, the universal truth of the piece. In juxtaposing the Flintstones to a cigarette product, the manufacturers are making it clear that they intend on pushing their brand onto school-age children. Correlating the idea that leisure and relaxation go hand in hand with smoking, the message seems to suggest to kids that smoking is a great way to cut loose and unwind. Even the diction and tone of the male leads support this idea. So diction, tone, and again, you got the ethos, the logos in here as well. So again, you focus on like the 3, maybe 4. Don't overdo 4, otherwise it becomes a rhetorical terms dumping ground of the salient features of the piece to establish the thesis. So heavy concentration on construction of meaning, just a little smidget of attention on authorial intent. And you can do that every single time. Just use a declarative template every single time. Vocab is good. Sentence constructs are nice and supple and flowy. So very, very good. Here's exemplar number 3. Although rather subtle in its logic, and again, you got the logos, the commercial is attempting to kill several birds with one stone. So a little colloquial, a little vernacular, but you're still in the logos. First, by having classic cartoon characters leisurely smoking Winstons, the manufacturers are suggesting that it's totally normal for kids to smoke, but at the time of its airing, smoking belonged primarily to the male gender sphere. Given this, Winston is also normalizing the idea of smoking for hardworking women. So this one just took a little different approach because the female leads in the piece, at least Fred's wife, is smoking at the end as well. So they factored that into it. During the airing here, smoking was definitely male sphere, right? It was uncouth, unclassy, unscrupulous for women to smoke. And this era is the time in which that was beginning to invert itself and flip itself, where women smoking in public was becoming rather normalized. So again, focus on like the 3 most salient things. Put them in order: construction of meaning, authorial intent, every single time. A little bit of tier 2, and then flex on those syntactical maneuvers. And you can do this every single time you write an introductory paragraph for the purposes of rhetorical analysis. So I'm going to make a whole bunch of these because I find I get a lot of bang for my buck out of this. I teach on a block schedule, and oftentimes, especially during exam time when we're really racing against the clock, that idea, that concept of 3 essays in under 2 hours, I'll show in an 80-minute block 2 commercials and do 2 introductions in a block. And it's a way to prepare, for the marathon, the grueling marathon of having to write so quick. But also it's a good way to practice reading. Once my students master the template and have that able and willing at their disposal, it becomes intuitive, instinctual, habitual to execute that template. And then the only thing they're left with is their ability to read and ascertain meaning from a text. So I like to spend more time focusing on training them to read than write, because the template's universal. It just shifts text to text to text. You're gonna declare when you write rhetorical analysis. So if you got questions or want to try your hand at writing some of your own Bob Ross samples, and you want me to overlook your shoulder, feel free to give me an email at teachingwritingcoach@gmail.com. I can also pass these slides on to you if you would like. Also note that going forward, I'm teaming up with the National Writing Project. So they've endorsed me and I've endorsed them. We are collaborating and offering my Teach It Right 5-week mastermind on Sunday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So our cadence has been, we run the course for 5 weeks. We meet 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on a Sunday night for 5 consecutive Sundays. Then we take a few weeks off and then run it again. So it's consistently running throughout the academic year and even during the summer months. So if you would like to join us or get more information on that, email me or visit my website at www.teachinghowtowrite.com. The other thing that NWP and I are doing is we're cobbling together a self-paced course. This should be up and running very shortly. We just got to finish the website for that. A lot of teachers say, I don't have 5 hours to devote to PD. I cannot give up an hour of my time Sunday evenings for 5 consecutive Sundays. So we built this self-paced course, and both the Teach It Right 5-week mastermind and the self-paced course come with a 10-hour PD credentialed badge from the National Writing Project. So think about the math there. If you need professional development, it's 5-hour commitment, you get 10-hour badge, and the self-paced course, you do it at your own pace, but it probably won't take you 10 hours to do, but we're awarding a 10-hour badge for that. And then I have some workshops coming up. Know that Tim Freitas, Brandon Abden, and I are presenting at the NCTE conference this coming fall. I'm doing some free webinars with Perfection Learning and with the National Writing Project as well. So I got many irons in the fire. Subscribe to my channel, and you can get in on the email list. And I email a couple of times a week, and you can stay abreast of my comings and goings and all the irons I have in the fire. So be well for now. Hopefully you found this to be useful. Happy teaching, happy writing.